everybody on. So really appreciate you here. Just a quick introduction of who I am. I'm Rich DePalma. I'm the current president of Circle C Area Democrats. Really appreciate having Congressman Doggett here and Senator Wendy Davis, who is our wonderful congressional candidate, and Julie Oliver, who's our other wonderful congressional candidate, who covers Southwest Austin. And so what we wanted to talk about was, of course, vote by mail. But before we do that, I think the congressman's going to give us probably about 5 minutes, just a very brief overview. There's a lot going on. He's communicating a ton with the constituents right now. I've seen it in just about every sort of medium. So thank you for that, Congressman. But just a brief little update, and then just move into vote by mail and
sure.
that need.
Rich, thank you so much for your leadership. I'm going to keep it. You're getting good audio there? You can hear me, and great. Anyone who is not getting periodic updates from me, I hope you will contact our office and let us send those to you. I try to get something out at least every week, just summarizing the action that's taken place or not taken place. I will head to Washington day after tomorrow. We will pass the Justice in Policing Act this week. And next week, we will act on affordable care and on a massive infrastructure bill that we discussed some this afternoon. Then after next week, we're out for a couple of weeks, and we will come back for a very intense period that will focus on the National Defense Authorization Act and the appropriation bills that are necessary to the operation of the government. It's unfortunate today, another tweet from Donald Trump opposing our Justice in Policing Act. We still are hopeful that we'll get some support for it and that eventually enough public pressure will build on the Senate that they'll have to act on it. But so much on justice in policing and on every other thing we care about rides on the outcome of the next election. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so committed to vote by mail. I will tell you, and here's the envelope my ballot came in. I voted by mail this afternoon, and I did it simply by completing my ballot here at home and putting it out in the mailbox for the letter carrier to pick up. So my ballot is on the way there for the July 14th election. And I feel so strongly about the importance of voting by mail in the midst of this pandemic that I have sent out applications, mailed applications to 8,363 people in my district without regard to, that's in Travis County alone. And that's without regard to whether they're ever like me or Republican or Democrat. The goal was to be sure that everyone who's 65 and older uses that right, because we know right now what intense problems we have with the pandemic in Austin and what it might be like on July the 14th. This is a good opportunity to test this out and see how it works. I really believe, while mine has been nonpartisan and you're coming at it from a Democratic perspective, that there's just not much that people can do these days that will count more, other than maybe writing a check to Julie and to Wendy and other local candidates. There's just nothing you can do that's more important than getting more people to vote by mail. I want to comment just a moment about that. Of course, as we saw what happened just recently in Georgia, where people were having to wait for hours. We know that Dana has had challenges getting enough poll workers here too. That's one of the reasons that there were problems in Georgia, one of many. And we saw in Milwaukee earlier in the year, the entire city of Milwaukee's polling places reduced to 5 for the whole city. So voting by mail is really important with the uncertainties that lie ahead. The more people we can get, the bigger the turnout. I think the bigger the Democratic victory. Ken Paxton, of course, from the outset has done all he can to intimidate people regarding the whole issue of disability for those who are under 65. I understand why he wants to intimidate people, because again, if people are scared off and it's a lower turnout, Republicans and Donald Trump have a good chance of prevailing. The decision that the Supreme Court made is really important to look at closely in terms of what they said and what they didn't say. They basically said, look, if all you have is you're scared about COVID-19, that's not enough, just fear of immunity. But they also made it very clear that while that would not be enough basis by itself, that the individual voter determines in accordance with the law whether they have a disability that is an underlying physical condition that prevents the voter from appearing without, just going to the specific words, without a likelihood of injuring the voter's health. So we know now, as we learn more about this COVID-19 disease, that there are a host of conditions that, in addition to just a fear of COVID-19, might well constitute that kind of disability under the statute. Dana de Beauvoir has commented herself that she was referred to asthma, diabetes, any other kind of immunocompromised system, any of the what are called the comorbidities that make you more likely to be subject to harm from COVID-19. And there's a good bit of information out from Donald Trump's own CDC about what some of those conditions are, including obesity and prior tobacco use, as things that could be an additional reason that someone would say, in addition to my just general fear about COVID-19, I have a condition that where I could be caused harm by going to a polling place. And so don't, as you talk with people, I think it's important to give them the information so that they can be sure that they're qualified under the statute. But if they are, that they cast their vote, because those are important votes to have as well. And again, we just don't know what the conditions will be like in the fall. I've seen reports today that even the Trump administration is planning for a second wave, despite what they've said. We know that every day recently, the numbers have gone up in Austin and across Central Texas. So to assure that a ballot is in, we need people voting by mail. I'm available to talk with anyone on this. I think my biggest concern about it right now is not Ken Paxton's intimidation, of which we will see more, but the fact that we just don't have enough people calling and following up and making it easy for people to vote by mail. We need more folks just like we're on tonight. Any new people you can recruit to do the calls to folks, tell them about what their rights are, and get them a ballot. We only have a short time before the July 14th election. That ballot request for vote by mail has to be received by Dana by July 2nd. That's next week. So the calls that are made now can really help on July 14th. And of course, it's vital that anyone who gets an application checks box 6A for an annual application. So that's kind of my overview, but two people who are on the ballot who I know want every voter out, and it's so important to their future success, are our great candidates. And so let me call on Wendy, Senator, if you want to add a word or two about this.
Sure. Thank you so much, Congressman. And I'm sorry to not be joining you guys by video tonight. I'm actually multitasking. I'm getting my hair done for the first time in 6 months, and I apologize. I'm in the chair right now. But I think that Congressman Doggett really laid this issue out incredibly well. I do want to let people know that for those of you who live in Congressional District 21, who are 65 and older, we had a pretty aggressive approach to our qualifying seniors in terms of making sure that we were mailing vote by mail applications to them during the primary. If the box was checked that you wanted to vote by mail all the way through the election, as Congressman Doggett was just referencing, then you'll automatically be getting or should have gotten your vote by mail application for the July runoff, and you'll also have it for November. And we're going to spend significant time and resources making sure that for everyone who hasn't made that request going into the November election, that we're getting that to them, and certainly spending volunteer time and efforts chasing those vote by mail applications to make sure that they're in. I agree with Congressman Doggett that if there is a legitimate concern that someone has that their health is for some reason uniquely at risk because of COVID, whether they have asthma or diabetes or any of the underlying risks that, as Congressman Doggett said, the Trump administration's own CDC has been talking about, I think we need to make sure we're spreading the word to people that they should be able to comfortably request a vote by mail application using that disability allowance. As you know, also right now, the Texas Democratic Party is at the US Supreme Court trying to take away the Fifth Circuit's block, their injunction on the lower court's order. The lower court had ordered that anyone who feared COVID, whether they had an underlying health condition or not, and who wanted to request a vote by mail application should be allowed the ability to do that. The Fifth Circuit stayed the effectiveness of that order while they consider the case. And the Texas Democratic Party has asked the US Supreme Court to lift that stay and to basically allow the district court's order to go in to be effective leading into the July 14th runoff and certainly leading into the November election. I don't know if we're going to hear from them before that July 2nd deadline to have a vote by mail application in. And so I would just urge that as we communicate with our voters throughout my district, Congressman Doggett's district and Julie Oliver's district, we make them aware that a legitimate health concern, certainly under the Texas Supreme Court's ruling, should allow them the opportunity to check that disability box. And remember that checking it, the elections administrators are not allowed to ask what the underlying disability is. If you check that box, they are required then to send you that vote by mail application, no questions asked. And I would just make sure as you communicate with people about that, you encourage their understanding on that particular issue.
Well, thank you very much, Wendy, and best wishes on your important endeavors. I'm holding Ken Paxton's latest threat here, and I want to emphasize what it says and what it doesn't say, consistent with what Wendy was just advising about all the people who are under 65 who might have a disability under the general wording of the statute, because he talks about how you can be subject to criminal sanctions. But if you read the sentence just before that, he talks about, as he does in several places through this letter, those who lack a qualifying sickness or physical condition, those who have a fear of COVID-19 unaccompanied by a qualifying sickness or physical condition does not constitute a disability. Paxton, by what he doesn't say there, suggests that if you do have a qualifying sickness or physical condition, you do have a disability. And that's why I refer to the information that's available right out of Trump's CDC that involves thousands of Texans who might have asthma, who might have diabetes, who might have hypertension, that if they have severe conditions, that this is a basis for them making the determination. And the Supreme Court was very clear that it's not up to Ken Paxton to decide, it's up to the individual voter to decide if they have a condition that qualifies under the statute. So with that, I would certainly want to hear, because she's doing such a great job out there campaigning again, from Julie Oliver.
Oh, thank you, Congressman Doggett, and thank you, Wendy. I haven't had my hair cut. I don't remember.
Me neither. I really need a haircut.
That's why it looks like this. Occasionally, I make my 21-year-old daughter come in and curl my hair because we have a little more time on our hands, and if I don't, it ends up looking like this. Yeah, there's not a lot I can add to what Congressman Doggett and Wendy already offered up, but I want to remind people that Ken Paxton, these are tactics of his to discourage voting. This is kind of what he does best. He tries to instill fear. This, went after Crystal Mason, a woman who voted in Fort Worth. 1 out of 2,000 people who were ineligible to vote in Fort Worth. She was the only one that we went after and put her in jail for 5 years for not being eligible to vote. So that is a tactic of his. But I want to remind people also, and you have to determine, again, this would be only for the category if you're checking the box for disability, that health information is one of the most protected pieces of information there is. It is incredibly secure. So I personally don't think, and this isn't, I want to be a caveat here, this isn't legal advice, but if I was going to encourage the Texas Democratic Party to perhaps pursue another avenue of argument, is it's none of Ken Paxton's business, nor is it this Supreme Court of Texas's business, nor is it the Fifth Circuit's business, nor is it the Supreme Court of the United States business what the health condition is. And whether that's physical health or mental health, that is protected health information. And so I tell people, when I said, I'm not going to give you advice on what bots you should check unless you're 65 and older, in which case you can absolutely check the box that you're 65 and older. And when we call folks, and we are making calls every day for any of the voters that we get who are 65 and older, we do ask them if they want to have an application to vote by mail. But I ask people, like, make your own determination. Many of y'all know I have a son who has an immune deficiency. He is an adult. He has made the determination that it would endanger his life to go vote in public. So we got him an application to vote by mail, and he will be doing that. So again, it's protected health information. Ken Paxton should not ever have access to that, nor should any of the voter registrars of the counties. I really want to share something with you, but we're not quite prepared to do it. It's something that a volunteer is working on, but our campaign is committed to wanting to get everybody who wants to vote by mail, who's 65 and up, an application to do so. So whether we do it out of our own budget or we have a script that pings the Secretary of State to send out applications, we want to ensure that everybody in our district who is a Democrat is able to vote by mail if they're 65 and older. So we will try to make that as easy as possible for them. So thank you all for having me. If y'all have questions, we're happy, I guess, to answer them. But yeah, I think there is broad latitude to determine what your own health condition is. And I don't think it's just limited to physical health. I mean, I think it could be mental health. So even though Ken Paxton says a fear isn't, a reasonable basis, I don't know that I don't think that's his call, quite honestly, because that falls into the realm of mental and or physical health.
Well, Julie, you really make a good point. And you also, by your comments, offer further reminder of how valuable it will be to have your healthcare expertise in Congress. So on to victory. And thank you for your insight. And Rich, I guess we turn it back over to you. It's really just a question of how many people we can get committed to make the calls now, preferably before July 2nd, so that people have a chance to vote in our important local elections, and many people have a chance to participate in selecting who will take over from Kirk Watson after the great job he's done. So thank you, and please, let's just keep building our numbers to make a difference.
I appreciate it, Congressman. I mean, we're lucky because there's been a foundation that's already had been starting to be built. One from the previous campaigns, but also the work like Blue Action Democrats has done. And so when we look about the 21 precincts we have in Southwest Austin that cut across, the multiple congressional districts, what we found is about a third of them, which a little over a third, it's running strong. And so I always call the Blue Action Democrats are blue berets, and Circle C being like the entry soldier coming in, and as they graduate and get in fighting shape, then they move over there for some real aggressive action. So as on the campaign side, and so I think it still stays that way. But we have a lot of precincts. When you just have a third of the precincts, we got 2/3 of the precincts that need some help, and they're it's on the continuum. Some of them are need a lot of work. Some of them just they're large precincts and need some additional bodies. So this is where folks can go ahead and plug in. And you can go to different websites. And so when we're talking to voters, and what I've heard is the continuum of, first you're letting them go to the state Democratic Party website, which you can see up right here. And so, they can go ahead and request the vote by mail application online and it'll be sent to them. But as you said, Congressman, time is running short. These are due July 2nd. They have to be in their hands. That's next Thursday. So we also provide some other options. And here's some additional information. By Blue Action Democrats and Circle C area Democrats had purchased a whole bunch of vote by mail applications right here. And so if you are a precinct chair that's on this call, or if you are somebody who wants one or knows somebody that wants one, there's a form that you can fill out. You can smoke signals, email, Facebook group, whatever. Somebody posted on Facebook today, they needed an application. They said, just give us your address. We will drop it off. But ultimately what the plan is, and this is a dress rehearsal right now in this primary runoff, it's going to be critically important as we come into the November election. So we need neighborhood leaders, precinct chairs, and folks all over, not just Southwest Austin, but everywhere, where that they're having a few of these applications on hand. And so if they know that they have somebody in their neighborhood doesn't want to get in the car, who doesn't want to, do something online, whose printer, can't effectively print out the application, then they can come, if you're in 367 over Meridian, they can come over to Rich's house and they'll be on the front yard. Blue Action Democrats is already doing that. You can go to Michelle Reinhardt's, portion, there'll be some there. So just need to expand it. We need to create that access because we all have this tremendous fear of Georgia taking place here in Texas in the midst of this peaking of COVID and putting everybody, at risk. And I know most of us will take ourselves out of the morgue in order to vote against Trump in November, but I don't want us to have to do that, and nor do any of us want us to do that. So there's a lot of different options, and so we have, just so you know, we have a lot of precinct chairs right now who are at the Travis County Democratic Party, that big event tonight online, and so not everybody's here, but I'm thankful for the ones who have joined us. We need to be able to get that information out. For those who are following up, this video is going to be posted online. There were some issues trying to stream it over Facebook, but we have the link. It will go up online. And for everybody else who's looking, so you can go to Circle C area Democrats, and you'll find information. You can go to Blue Action Democrats for Southwest Austin. They have great information on for mail-in ballot. And of course, don't forget to go to the different congressional, our Congressman Doggett and our congressional candidates, Julie Oliver and Wendy Davis, there's information there. There's a plethora of information, but we got to start going now. So there was a form that was attached to the precinct chairs. We're going to make sure it comes up with when we post it on Facebook. And you can fill out that form if you want to get involved. If you want some of these cards in your front yard and you want to be a resource over the next 4.5 months to be able to beat Trump and focus on your particular precinct or the precinct right next to you. And with that, I know I've just spoke more than I wanted because I wanted to hear everybody else. Can we go ahead and field a couple questions? And if you can start with, if I can get Teresa to moderate.
Sure. Do you want me to take some questions that were in the chat box?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, somebody said, is the Texas Democratic Party also sending out applications to seniors? Are we coordinating this so that we're not wasting money?
So I'll take that on. So we just finally started being able to get that funnel, and there's bigger conversations.
This is Wendy. I can answer just on behalf of my campaign. I know that in the primary, when we were sending those out, we were coordinating, yes, with the state party about that, and making sure that we weren't spending double efforts and double time trying to do it.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
Real quick, if I can finish up, Teresa.
Oh, sure, sorry.
The data component is something that we're all working through, and that is absolutely the goal when we have a true coordinated campaign, and it's really starting right now with this vote by mail. And so leveraging where the state put in that survey And so we can track it in Van to who's had that outreach, but it's going to expand as we move forward out past vote by mail, or actually when we hit vote by mail again in the fall, in early winter. But this is, the goal is that when you're working on a congressional campaign as a volunteer, if you have down ballot and somebody said, I love Julie Oliver and I also want, you know, I want to be voting for Vicki Goodwin and I want to sign to the county commissioner, and drop them off, that we capture that information so we don't have to come back around. So we're working on some of the other stuff, but right now we do have vote by mail.
And I would add to that also that when we have a survey question, so when we make the calls and we ask if somebody wants the application, the survey maps to the Texas Democratic Party. And so they are the ones who are sending out, I mean, so far through our calls to date, those are the ones that have been sent out to the folks that we're calling on the phone. And I know there was one evening where Wendy and I both did a happy hour with the Travis County Democratic Party, and we were going off of the, I think, Texas Democratic Party script. So asking folks if they wanted to vote by mail, everything got mapped to the Texas Democratic Party through, I should say, through the survey question.
Thank you, Julie. Any other questions?
Ross, did you want to make a comment?
Sure, thank you. It's
Sure.
my understanding, I got some of those VBM applications, and so at least the first batch that were printed out accidentally did not have the mailing address on them. And what I have done is generated a PDF that can be used with Avery. You know, and Avery, I think it's 5160 is the Avery number for address labels. So if anyone wants that, they can either, I'll send it to Rich, or my email address is ROSSPUMFREY @gmail.com. I'll put that in the chat also. I'd be glad to send you that PDF, and then you can generate your labels with the mailing address on it to add to the application.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else have a question or a comment for the good of the order? Charlotte.
Yeah, I just want to comment. Trump and Republicans in Texas in particular have scared Republicans about using mail ballots. They believe they are fraudulent. And so every Democrat we can get to mail by ballot is not being matched by Republicans. They are, I live in a senior living facility, and I actually, in a little informal gathering, I said, you know, we all ought to be using mail ballots. And it was like throwing kerosene on a fire. The Republicans will not do it. And I overheard one of them say, I'd rather get the virus than vote for a Democrat. So they will go to the polls or not. And it's an advantage. The more we have voting by mail, it's not being matched by the Republicans because they've been taught it's fraudulent.
There'll be a Darwinian weeding out.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I think that's it. Unless we see, if anybody has one last question, we'll go ahead and give you back your evening. I definitely appreciate everybody being here, and we're going to keep broadcasting this over and over so people know the fact that we can request these, and the reason as to why is up to us. And we can move forward. But in the meantime, we need people to sign up for some phone banks to get this out, and particularly for the July runoff, and then just prepare yourself for November.
Yes.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Rich.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Done.
Here. Leave.
No, we did it because